I froze behind my kitchen island, watching my mother Patricia give an unauthorized tour of my newly purchased house to my sister-in-law Amanda and her friend Sarah. I had kept this house purchase secret from my family for 8 months because of their history of boundary violations. Patricia pointed out features and discussed potential renovations as if she owned the place. Amanda snapped photos while Sarah measured rooms with a tape measure. I realized my mother had somehow gotten my spare key and was treating my private sanctuary like family property. My heart pounded as I listened to her casual violation of my trust and privacy. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was hiding in my own house. For 8 years, I had saved every penny I could as a software engineer, living in a cramped studio apartment and driving a 15-year-old Honda Civic. I had dreams of owning something that was truly mine, a place where my family couldn't just walk in and take over like they had done my entire adult life. My brother Marcus married Amanda 2 years ago, and she immediately began treating me like her personal ATM. It started small with borrowing $20 for gas, then escalated to using my car for weeks while theirs was supposedly in the shop. She had my credit card number memorized from emergencies and used it liberally for her definition of necessities. Every weekend became an expectation that I would babysit their twin toddlers, Jake and Emma, while they went out for date nights that stretched into entire weekends. The breaking point came 6 months ago when Amanda used my credit card to buy a $3,000 living room set without asking. When I confronted her, she burst into tears and claimed she thought I wouldn't mind since family should help each other. My mother Patricia immediately took her side, delivering her favorite lecture about how family helps family and how I was being selfish with my money. That's when I realized I needed an escape plan. I started looking for houses in secret, using a different bank account they didn't know about. I found this perfect 3-bedroom ranch house in a quiet neighborhood 20 minutes from downtown. The previous owners had maintained it beautifully, with hardwood floors throughout and a kitchen that overlooked a spacious backyard. It was everything I had dreamed of, and I could afford it comfortably. I closed on the house 3 weeks ago, planning to live here for 6 months before telling anyone. I wanted time to settle in, to feel what it was like to have a space that was completely mine without family drama attached to it. I had been so careful, using my work address for all the paperwork and making sure none of my mail went to my old apartment where Patricia might see it. But now, listening to my mother's voice echo through my living room, I realized my precautions hadn't been enough. I had hidden a spare key under a fake rock by the front porch for emergencies, and somehow she had found it. The violation felt deeper than just breaking and entering. She was touring my house like she was showing off her own property. From my hiding spot, I could hear Amanda's excited voice as she described where she would put furniture. Sarah was asking about the square footage and whether the basement was finished. Patricia was responding to every question with authority, as if she had every right to be here discussing my home with strangers. My phone buzzed with a text message, and I carefully pulled it out to check. It was from Marcus asking if I wanted to come to dinner Sunday. The normalcy of his message while his wife was currently photographing my bedroom felt surreal. None of them knew that I knew what was happening. The tour continued for another 20 minutes. I heard them walk through each room, discussing the house's potential and Amanda's decorating ideas. Patricia mentioned something about the neighborhood being perfect for raising children, and Amanda agreed enthusiastically. My stomach dropped as I began to understand that this wasn't just curiosity. They were planning something. Finally, I heard the front door close and watched through the window as Patricia's silver sedan pulled out of my driveway. I waited another 10 minutes to make sure they were really gone before emerging from my hiding spot. The house felt violated, like strangers had been rummaging through my personal belongings, even though nothing appeared to be missing. I walked through each room they had visited, trying to see it through their eyes. In my bedroom, I noticed Amanda had opened my closet door, which I always kept closed. In the guest bathroom, someone had used my hand towel, small signs that they had made themselves comfortable in my space without permission. The spare key was no longer under the fake rock when I checked. Patricia had taken it with her, probably planning to return. The realization that my mother felt entitled to come and go from my house whenever she pleased sent a chill down my spine. This was exactly the kind of boundary violation I had bought this house to escape. I immediately drove to the hardware store and bought new locks for every exterior door. As I installed them that evening, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Patricia didn't do anything halfway, and if she was bold enough to give unauthorized tours of my house, she had bigger plans in mind. The climactic moment came when I checked my voicemail and found a message from Amanda, left just an hour after they had left my house. Her voice was sweet and innocent as she said, "Hey Dennis, I hope you don't mind, but your mom mentioned you might have some extra space at your place. Marcus and I were wondering if we could talk to you about temporarily staying there while we save money for our own house. We're having some financial difficulties, and Patricia said you would understand about family helping family. Call me back when you get this." The message confirmed my worst fears. Patricia hadn't just invaded my privacy. She had made commitments on my behalf without my knowledge or consent. Amanda was already assuming I would agree to let them move into my house, and they had clearly discussed this arrangement during their unauthorized tour. My sanctuary was being claimed by my family before I had even had a chance to enjoy it myself. I spent a sleepless night installing the new locks and trying to process what had happened. I didn't return Amanda's call, hoping to buy myself time to figure out how to handle the situation. But Patricia had other plans. The next evening, my phone rang with my mother's contact photo filling the screen. Her tone was artificially cheerful when I answered, but I could hear the underlying steel in her voice that I had learned to recognize over the years. "Dennis, sweetheart, we need to have a family meeting. Can you come over to my house tonight at 7? It's important." I wanted to refuse, but I knew Patricia would only escalate if I didn't show up. "What's this about, Mom? We'll discuss it when you get here. Marcus and Amanda will be here too. Don't be late." The line went dead before I could respond. I stared at my phone, knowing this was about the house but unsure how much Patricia was planning to reveal. I had hoped to control the narrative when I eventually told my family about the purchase, but Patricia had taken that choice away from me. I arrived at my mother's house at exactly 7 o'clock, parking behind Marcus's pickup truck and Amanda's minivan. Through the living room window, I could see more people inside than I had expected. My stomach sank as I realized Patricia had assembled a larger audience for whatever confrontation she had planned. When I walked through the front door, I found not just Marcus and Amanda, but also my Aunt Carol, who lived 3 hours away and never visited unless something major was happening. The twins were playing in the corner with toys that looked suspiciously new and expensive. Everyone turned to look at me as I entered, and the artificial smiles they wore made my skin crawl. "Dennis, honey, sit down," Patricia said, gesturing to the only empty chair in the room, which was positioned directly across from where she stood near the television. "We need to talk." I remained standing near the doorway, keeping my options open. "Talk about what?" Patricia's smile faltered slightly at my defiant tone, but she quickly recovered. "About family responsibility and making sure we're all taking care of each other properly." She reached for a manila folder on the coffee table and pulled out several sheets of paper. My heart stopped when I recognized bank statements with my name on them. Somehow, Patricia had been tracking my finances without my knowledge. "I've been concerned about you, Dennis," she began, spreading the papers out like evidence in a courtroom. "You've been very secretive lately, and when I looked into your spending patterns, I discovered some troubling behavior." I found my voice. "How did you get those bank statements?" "You still have that old joint account from when you were in college," she said matter-of-factly. "I've been getting notifications about large transactions, and I was worried someone might be taking advantage of you." The joint account. I had forgotten about it completely. It was a small checking account my parents had insisted I open when I turned 18, supposedly for emergencies. I never used it, but apparently notifications about my other accounts were still being sent to that address. Patricia continued her presentation like she was delivering a PowerPoint to corporate executives. "According to these records, you've been spending far beyond your means. A house payment of $2,800 per month, utilities, insurance. Dennis, this is financial irresponsibility on a massive scale." Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his chair but said nothing. Amanda was nodding along with Patricia's words, occasionally glancing at me with what looked like disappointment. Aunt Carol was taking notes in a small notebook, which struck me as oddly formal for a family meeting. "The thing is," Patricia continued, "your behavior affects all of us. When you make poor financial decisions, it means you can't help your family when we need it. And right now, Marcus and Amanda are facing a real crisis. Amanda chose that moment to start crying. Not the gentle tears of someone who was mildly upset, but the full-body sobs of someone who wanted to make sure everyone in the room understood the depth of her despair. Marcus put his arm around her shoulders and glared at me like I was personally responsible for her pain. "They're being evicted," Patricia announced dramatically. "Their landlord is selling the building, and they have 30 days to find a new place. With 2 small children and the housing market the way it is, they can't find anything affordable." I knew this was a lie. I had driven by their apartment complex yesterday, and there were no eviction notices or for sale signs anywhere. But calling them out on the lie would only make me look heartless in front of the assembled family audience. "The solution is obvious," Patricia said, pulling out another piece of paper. "You have a 3-bedroom house that you're rattling around in all by yourself. Marcus and Amanda could move in temporarily while they get back on their feet financially. It would help them, and it would help you with the mortgage payment." Aunt Carol looked up from her notes. "Dennis, I have to say, I'm disappointed in you. When I was your age, family came first. The fact that you bought a house without telling anyone and now won't help your brother when he's in crisis really makes me question the values you were raised with." The guilt trip was delivered with surgical precision. Patricia had assembled the perfect audience to make me look selfish and cruel for wanting to maintain ownership of my own home. Even the twins had been positioned strategically in the corner, serving as silent reminders of the innocent children who would supposedly suffer if I didn't comply with the family's demands. But the real shock came when Patricia pulled out her phone and started scrolling through text messages. "I've already told the family about your house purchase, Dennis. I was so proud of you for finally being able to afford something nice. But the response has been disappointing." She held up her phone, showing me screen after screen of text messages from relatives I rarely spoke to. Cousins, uncles, even family friends had apparently been discussing my selfishness in group chats I didn't even know existed. "Cousin Beth says you promised to host her daughter's wedding reception at your place," Patricia said, reading from her phone. "Uncle Robert was counting on using your house for his retirement party next month, and your grandmother specifically asked me to book your guest rooms for her birthday weekend next month." I stared at her in disbelief. "I never promised any of those things. I haven't even talked to those people in months." "Well, I may have spoken for you," Patricia said with a dismissive wave of her hand. "I knew you would want to help family, so I told them you would be happy to host their events. They've already sent out invitations with your address on them." The room spun slightly as I realized the scope of what Patricia had done. She hadn't just invaded my privacy, she had committed me to hosting multiple family events without my consent. She had essentially turned my home into the family community center and collected deposits from relatives who thought they were booking a legitimate venue. Amanda stopped crying long enough to add, "We've already started packing. Marcus took time off work next week to move our stuff. The twins are so excited about their new bedrooms." The presumption was staggering. They had planned my entire life around their needs without bothering to ask my permission. Patricia had orchestrated a complete takeover of my personal space and financial resources, then assembled a family tribunal to make me feel guilty for objecting to it. I looked around the room at their expectant faces. They were all waiting for me to capitulate, to agree to let my boundaries be erased in the name of family obligation. Patricia's satisfied smile suggested she believed victory was inevitable. That's when I realized I was facing something much bigger than a simple family disagreement. This was a coordinated campaign to strip away my autonomy and turn me into the family's permanent financial resource. And if I didn't fight back now, it would only get worse. I left my mother's house that night without committing to anything, despite the family's obvious disappointment in my non-compliance. Patricia's parting words were a warning disguised as concern. "Think carefully about your decision, Dennis. Family is all we have in this world, and you don't want to burn bridges you might need to cross someday." But something about Amanda's eviction story bothered me. I had seen their apartment building recently, and nothing seemed amiss. The next morning, I decided to drive by their place again, this time with a more critical eye. The Riverside Gardens apartment complex looked exactly as it had the week before. Well-maintained, with a professional management company sign, and no indication of any sale or mass evictions. I parked across the street and watched for 20 minutes. Residents were coming and going normally, and I even saw a maintenance worker fixing a sprinkler system, which seemed unlikely if the building was being sold for demolition. On impulse, I walked into the leasing office. A friendly woman in her 40s greeted me from behind the desk. "Hi there. I'm thinking about moving to this area," I said. "Are you expecting any units to become available soon?" "Actually, we have a great selection right now," she replied enthusiastically. "We're running a special for new tenants. Are you looking for a one-bedroom or something larger?" I was specifically interested in a 3-bedroom unit. I heard someone mention that a family with twins might be moving out soon. Her expression shifted slightly. "Oh, you must mean the Hendersons in Unit 12B. They're not moving out that I know of. In fact, they just renewed their lease for another year last month. Lovely family. Always pay their rent on time." My suspicions were confirmed. Amanda and Marcus weren't being evicted. They had recently committed to staying in their current apartment for another full year. The crisis Patricia had described was completely fabricated. But if they weren't in financial trouble, why were they so eager to move into my house? I decided to dig deeper. I reached out to my friend Jake, who worked at the same automotive plant as Marcus. Over coffee that afternoon, I casually asked how things were going at work. "Business has been great," Jake said. "We just got a big contract with Ford, and everyone's getting overtime. Marcus actually got promoted to shift supervisor last month. Pretty nice raise, from what I heard." Another lie exposed. Marcus hadn't just maintained his job. He had gotten a promotion with a significant salary increase. Their financial situation was actually better than it had been in years. That evening, I called my friend Lisa, who lived in the same neighborhood as Marcus and Amanda. I asked if she had noticed any moving trucks or packing boxes around their apartment. "Moving?" Lisa sounded confused. "Amanda was just telling me yesterday about the new playground equipment they're planning to buy for the twins' backyard area. She seemed really settled in. Why would you think they're moving?" The pieces were falling into place. But I needed more information. I spent the next few days discreetly asking mutual friends and acquaintances about Marcus and Amanda's financial situation. What I discovered made my blood boil. Not only were they financially stable, but Amanda had been bragging to friends about Marcus's promotion and their plans to renovate their apartment. She had posted photos on social media of expensive new furniture and toys for the twins, hardly the purchases of a family facing eviction. More disturbing was what I learned about their research into my neighborhood. Through Lisa, I discovered that Amanda had been asking detailed questions about property values in my area. She had driven through my neighborhood multiple times, taking photos and asking neighbors about the local schools and amenities. The manipulation went deeper than I had initially realized. This wasn't a spontaneous request for help. It was a calculated plan to move into my house regardless of my wishes. Patricia, Marcus, and Amanda had been coordinating this scheme for weeks, possibly months. The phone call that changed everything came 3 days later. Patricia's voice was thick with fake tears when I answered. "Dennis, I'm so disappointed in you. I've been crying all day thinking about how your father would feel if he knew how selfish you've become." The mention of my father, who had died 5 years earlier, was Patricia's nuclear option. She only brought him up when she wanted to inflict maximum emotional damage. "Your father and I sacrificed everything for you and Marcus," she continued. "We worked 2 jobs each to pay for your college education. We went without vacations and new cars so you boys could have opportunities. And this is how you repay us? By hiding your success from your family and refusing to help when we need you?" I had heard variations of this guilt trip my entire adult life, but this time something felt different. Patricia's manipulation was more desperate, more theatrical than usual. It was as if she was following a script rather than expressing genuine emotion. "Mom, I never asked you to sacrifice anything for me. I paid my own way through college with student loans that I'm still repaying. And I've helped Marcus and Amanda dozens of times over the past 2 years. That's not the point," Patricia snapped, her fake tears disappearing instantly. "Family means we share everything. Your father understood that. When his brother needed help, we took him in for 6 months without question. When my sister was going through her divorce, we paid her legal fees. That's what real families do." But then came the revelation that made everything crystal clear. "I've been talking to a lawyer, Dennis. Did you know that if family members live in a house long enough, they can establish residency rights? If Marcus and Amanda move in now, even temporarily, it becomes much harder for you to remove them later. It's called adverse possession, and it protects families from being thrown out on the street by greedy relatives. My mother had just revealed that she had been researching legal ways to establish a claim on my property. She wasn't asking for temporary help. She was planning a permanent takeover of my house using legal loopholes. The lawyer also mentioned that sometimes family members have to step in when someone is making poor financial decisions. She continued ominously. If we can show that you're not mentally capable of managing your money responsibly, the court can appoint a family member to help make better choices for you. The threat was clear. Comply with their demands, or Patricia would try to have me declared mentally incompetent so she could control my finances directly. She had been building a case for months, documenting what she called my secretive behavior and isolation from family as evidence of declining mental health. I hung up the phone with shaking hands, finally understanding the full scope of what I was facing. This wasn't just about letting family members stay in my house temporarily. Patricia had been planning to take legal control of my property and finances, using my brother and sister-in-law as accomplices in a coordinated campaign to strip away my independence. The woman who had raised me, who claimed to love me unconditionally, had been systematically plotting to destroy my autonomy and steal my financial security, and she had convinced herself that she was doing it for my own good. The harassment began the very next morning. I was in the middle of a code review at work when my supervisor, Janet, knocked on my office door with a concerned expression. "Dennis, I need to speak with you privately. We've had several phone calls this morning from people claiming to be your family members." My stomach dropped. "What kind of calls?" "Your cousin called saying you had promised to pay for her daughter's wedding venue, but now you're refusing to honor the commitment. Your uncle called demanding to know why you're keeping family members from using a house that apparently belongs to all of you, and someone claiming to be your aunt called to say she's worried about your mental health." Janet closed the door and sat down across from my desk. "Dennis, I have to ask, are you involved in some kind of family financial dispute? Because these calls are affecting your professional reputation, and I need to know if this is going to become a bigger problem." I explained the situation as professionally as possible, emphasizing that my family was upset about a personal property purchase and was trying to pressure me by involving my workplace. Janet listened with growing concern. "I'm going to block these numbers from our main line," she said finally. "But Dennis, you need to handle this quickly. We can't have clients or partners thinking our employees are involved in financial scandals." The calls didn't stop with my workplace. Over the next week, Patricia orchestrated a comprehensive campaign to damage my reputation throughout our small town. She called my gym claiming I had given the family membership as a gift but was now trying to cancel it out of spite. She contacted my bank suggesting they verify my identity because family members were concerned about unusual spending patterns. Most painfully, she called my grandmother's assisted living facility and told them I had been acting strangely and might not be mentally fit to make decisions about grandma's care. This prompted a concerned call from the facility director, who had known me for years and was confused by the sudden allegations about my character. Amanda escalated the social media campaign, posting carefully crafted messages that painted me as a selfish family member who had abandoned his relatives in their time of need. She shared photos of the twins playing in their current apartment, with captions about how some family members have forgotten what it means to care about children. The posts were designed to look sympathetic without directly accusing me of wrongdoing, but the message was clear to anyone who knew the situation. Friends and acquaintances began commenting with supportive messages for Amanda and questioning looks for me. The extended family pressure intensified when my cousin Beth called me directly, furious about her daughter's wedding. "Dennis, I don't know what's gotten into you, but I've already sent out 200 invitations with your address as the reception venue. I've put deposits down with caterers and a DJ. If you back out now, you'll ruin my daughter's wedding and cost me thousands of dollars." I tried to explain that I had never agreed to host the wedding, but Beth cut me off. "Your mother specifically told me you offered your house for family events. She said you were excited to help and that you had plenty of space. Now you're saying that was all a lie?" Similar calls came from other relatives who had been promised access to my house for various events. Each conversation followed the same pattern. They had been told I had volunteered my home. They had already made financial commitments based on that promise, and now they considered me responsible for any losses they incurred. Patricia had essentially been running a booking scam using my house as collateral, collecting deposits and fees from family members while I remained completely unaware of the commitments she was making on my behalf. The situation reached a breaking point when Marcus finally called me directly. His voice was strained and uncomfortable, lacking his usual confidence. "Dennis, we need to talk. This whole situation has gotten out of hand, and Amanda's really upset about the things people are saying online." "What things?" I asked. "Some people are starting to figure out that maybe we weren't being completely honest about our financial situation. And a few of our friends have been asking why we're so desperate to move out of our apartment if we're not really being evicted." I realized that Patricia's elaborate manipulation campaign was beginning to backfire. In her eagerness to paint me as the villain, she had encouraged Marcus and Amanda to lie so extensively that their stories were no longer adding up. "Look," Marcus continued, "I know Mom can be intense sometimes, but she really believes she's looking out for the family. Maybe we can work something out that makes everyone happy." But before I could respond, Marcus dropped the bombshell that changed everything. "The thing is, Dennis, Mom has already collected money from a lot of people who want to use your house for events. We're talking about thousands of dollars. If those events don't happen, people are going to demand their money back, and Mom doesn't have it." Patricia's scam had grown far beyond what I had initially understood. She hadn't just promised my house to family members. She had been actively collecting payments for bookings and events that could never actually take place. She had created a financial house of cards that depended on me surrendering control of my property to avoid exposure. "How much money are we talking about?" I asked. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Close to $20,000. Maybe more. She's been taking deposits for wedding receptions, birthday parties, even corporate retreats. She told people you were starting a family event rental business." The scope of Patricia's fraud was staggering. She had been using my name and property to run an illegal booking business, collecting thousands of dollars from unsuspecting family members and acquaintances. When the events inevitably couldn't take place, she planned to blame me for being uncooperative rather than admit to her deception. "Marcus, you realize this is fraud, right? Mom has been stealing money from people by lying about owning property that belongs to me." "She doesn't see it that way," Marcus replied weakly. "She thinks the house should belong to the whole family anyway, so she's just managing the family asset." That conversation made me realize that Marcus wasn't an innocent victim in Patricia's scheme. He had known about the fraudulent bookings and chosen to say nothing, hoping to benefit from the proceeds when they moved into my house. The final straw came when I discovered that Patricia had been going through my personal mail. She had convinced my old landlord to forward my mail to her address, claiming I was having mental health issues and needed family assistance managing my affairs. She had been intercepting bank statements, insurance documents, and other personal correspondence for months. Among the intercepted mail was a letter from my employer's Human Resources Department about my annual performance review and salary information. Patricia had been tracking my income and benefits in detail, building a comprehensive financial profile that she planned to use in her campaign to have me declared mentally incompetent. I realized that everything Patricia had told me about tracking my spending through the old joint account was just the tip of the iceberg. She had been conducting comprehensive surveillance of my financial life, gathering information that she could use to support legal action against me. The woman who had raised me had transformed into someone I didn't recognize, a manipulative predator who was willing to destroy my reputation, career, and mental health to get what she wanted. And she had convinced herself that she was doing it all out of love and concern for family unity. I finally understood that I wasn't dealing with a family disagreement. I was the target of a sophisticated fraud and harassment campaign designed to force me to surrender my autonomy and financial independence. Patricia had weaponized the entire extended family against me, and she wouldn't stop until she had complete control over my life. It was time to fight back. I knew I couldn't handle this situation alone. The next morning I called my lawyer, David Chen, who had handled my house closing. I explained the entire situation, including Patricia's threats about adverse possession and mental competency hearings. David listened carefully, taking detailed notes. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment before speaking. "Dennis, What you're describing is a pattern of financial abuse and harassment that goes far beyond a family dispute. We need to document everything and consider criminal charges. He referred me to a private investigator named Sarah Martinez, who specialized in family financial crimes. Within 48 hours, Sarah had begun gathering evidence of Patricia's activities. The investigation revealed even more disturbing information than I had suspected. Patricia had been running variations of this scam for years, targeting different family members when she needed money. Sarah discovered that my Uncle Robert's medical emergency fund from 3 years ago had actually been used to pay for Patricia's vacation to Florida. My grandmother's missing jewelry, which we had assumed was stolen during a break-in, had actually been pawned by Patricia to cover gambling debts. Your mother has been the family's financial predator for over a decade, Sarah explained during our meeting. She identifies family members with resources, then creates manufactured crises to justify taking their money. You're just the latest target. The evidence was overwhelming. Sarah had bank records showing Patricia's gambling addiction, which had cost her tens of thousands of dollars over the past 5 years. She had been systematically stealing from family members to fund her addiction, while presenting herself as the family's moral authority. Armed with this information, I filed police reports for identity theft, fraud, and harassment. I also obtained restraining orders against Patricia, Marcus, and Amanda, prohibiting them from contacting me or coming near my house. The restraining order process revealed additional evidence of their coordination. Amanda had been keeping detailed notes about my daily schedule, recording when I left for work and returned home. Marcus had taken photographs of my house from multiple angles, including pictures of my windows and security system. They had been planning a comprehensive invasion of my privacy and property. When the restraining orders were served, Patricia's reaction was explosive. She called every family member she could reach, claiming I had turned against the family and was persecuting innocent people. She organized a family meeting without me, where she presented herself as a victim of my supposed mental breakdown. But the evidence I had gathered was too strong for her manipulation to overcome. When family members saw the bank records and discovered the truth about Patricia's financial crimes, the tide began to turn. My Uncle Robert was the first to break ranks. He called me directly after learning that his medical fund had been stolen. "Dennis, I owe you a massive apology. I had no idea what your mother was doing to all of us. She's been playing us against each other for years." Similar calls came from other relatives as they realized the extent of Patricia's manipulation. My cousin Beth discovered that Patricia had no legal authority to book my house for events, and that the deposits she had collected were never intended to be refunded. The most heartbreaking call came from my grandmother, who had been told by Patricia that I was suffering from mental illness and couldn't be trusted to make decisions. "Dennis, honey, I'm so sorry I believed her lies about you. I should have known better. You've always been the most responsible one in the family." As more family members learned the truth, Patricia's support network collapsed. Marcus found himself in an impossible position, caught between his loyalty to his mother and the overwhelming evidence of her crimes. Amanda, facing potential criminal charges for her role in the harassment campaign, finally broke down and confessed to her participation in Patricia's scheme. She admitted that they had never been facing eviction and that their financial situation was actually quite good. She also revealed that Patricia had promised them they could live in my house permanently if they helped her maintain pressure on me to comply. "I'm sorry, Dennis," Amanda said during a phone call that I recorded with my lawyer's approval. "Patricia convinced me that you were being selfish and that we deserved a share of your success. I realize now how wrong that was." The legal consequences began falling into place rapidly. The police investigation uncovered evidence that Patricia had committed multiple felonies, including identity theft, mail fraud, and elder abuse. Her gambling addiction provided the motive for her financial crimes, while the detailed records she had kept actually made the prosecutor's job easier. Patricia's lawyer abandoned her case when the evidence became overwhelming. No attorney wanted to represent someone who had systematically defrauded her own family members, while attempting to have her son declared mentally incompetent for refusing to participate in her schemes. The local newspaper picked up the story when Patricia was arrested, running a feature about financial abuse within families. The article vindicated me publicly, explaining how predatory family members could use emotional manipulation to steal from their relatives. My workplace situation improved dramatically once my colleagues understood that I had been the victim of a harassment campaign rather than the perpetrator of financial irresponsibility. Janet called me into her office to apologize for the company's initial suspicion and to assure me that my professional reputation was intact. The most satisfying moment came when I received an unexpected visitor at my house. Marcus stood on my front porch looking exhausted and defeated, but also somehow relieved. "Dennis, can we talk? I have something important to tell you." He explained that living under Patricia's manipulation had been destroying his marriage and his mental health for years. He had been terrified of standing up to her because she had convinced him that family loyalty required absolute obedience to her wishes. "I never wanted to take your house," he said quietly. "I was just so tired of fighting with her, and she made it seem like you owed us something. But I realize now that she was using me just like she used everyone else." Marcus revealed that Patricia had been emotionally abusing both of her sons since childhood, using guilt and manipulation to control their behavior and decisions. He had been too ashamed to admit that his own mother was the source of so much family dysfunction. "I want to make this right," he continued. "Amanda and I are going to testify against Mom in court. We're also going to pay back everyone we can for their losses." But the biggest surprise was yet to come. 2 days after Marcus's visit, my lawyer called with unexpected news. During the investigation into Patricia's financial crimes, the police had discovered a safe deposit box that she had been keeping secret from the entire family. "Dennis, you need to sit down for this," David said. "They found a letter in that safe deposit box addressed to you from your father. It was written shortly before he died, with instructions that it should only be opened if Patricia ever tried to manipulate the family financially." I met David at the police station, where they allowed me to read the letter under supervision. My father's handwriting was unmistakable, and his words hit me like a physical blow. "Dear Dennis," the letter began, "if you are reading this, it means your mother has gone too far with her manipulation and financial schemes. I have been documenting her behavior for years, hoping I could find a way to stop her before it came to this." The letter revealed that my father had known about Patricia's gambling addiction and her history of stealing from family members. He had been quietly gathering evidence of her crimes, preparing for the day when someone would need to stop her. "Your mother is sick, Dennis, but not in a way that excuses her behavior. She has been using emotional manipulation and financial abuse to control our family for decades. I stayed silent to protect you and Marcus, but I realize now that my silence only enabled her to hurt more people." The letter continued with detailed information about Patricia's previous victims, including several family members who had never spoken about their losses. My father had been keeping meticulous records of her financial crimes, waiting for the right moment to expose her. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. "I have been setting aside money for you in a separate account that your mother doesn't know about. By the time you read this letter, it should be substantial enough to help you protect yourself from her schemes and to help other family members recover from their losses." The separate account contained over $150,000, money my father had been saving from his pension and life insurance policies without Patricia's knowledge. He had been planning ahead, knowing that his death would likely trigger an escalation in Patricia's manipulative behavior. "I'm sorry I couldn't protect you while I was alive," the letter concluded, "but I hope this money and evidence will give you the tools you need to stop her from hurting anyone else. You are a good man, Dennis, and you deserve a life free from her manipulation. Don't let guilt or family obligation trap you in her web of lies." The discovery of my father's letter and the secret account changed everything. Suddenly I had the resources to help family members who had been victimized by Patricia, and the evidence to ensure she faced serious legal consequences for her crimes. The police investigation expanded as more victims came forward with their stories. My Uncle Robert's wife revealed that Patricia had been pressuring them to take out a second mortgage on their home, claiming it was necessary to help with family medical expenses. My cousin Beth discovered that Patricia had been forging her signature on credit card applications, using her identity to rack up thousands of dollars in debt. Most heartbreaking was my grandmother's testimony. She revealed that Patricia had been systematically stealing her Social Security payments for months, convincing her that the money was needed for Dennis's mental health treatment. Patricia had been using my name to steal from my own grandmother, while simultaneously painting me as mentally unstable. The pattern was consistent across all of Patricia's victims. She would identify a family member with resources or income, manufacture a crisis that required immediate financial intervention, then redirect the money to her own accounts, while blaming other family members for being uncooperative or selfish. Marcus's testimony was particularly damaging to Patricia's defense. He revealed that she had been coaching him and Amanda on what to say to make their eviction story more believable. She had provided them with detailed scripts for phone calls and social media posts designed to pressure me into compliance. Mom told us that Dennis was mentally ill and that the family needed to take control of his finances for his own protection, Marcus testified. She said that if we could get him to let us move into his house, it would be the first step toward having him declared incompetent so she could manage his money properly. The competency hearing that Patricia had threatened was never intended to help me. It was designed to give her legal control over my inheritance and earning potential. She had been planning to have herself appointed as my financial guardian, effectively stealing my future income while claiming it was for my own good. Amanda's testimony revealed additional details about Patricia's coordination of the harassment campaign. Patricia had provided her with a list of my professional contacts and encouraged her to call them with false allegations about my mental health and financial responsibility. Patricia told me that if we could damage Dennis's professional reputation, it would support the claim that he was having a mental breakdown, Amanda testified. She said that if his coworkers thought he was unstable, it would be easier to convince a judge that he needed family supervision. The trial revealed the full scope of Patricia's manipulation and financial abuse. She had stolen over $75,000 from family members over the past 5 years, using elaborate lies and emotional manipulation to cover her tracks. The judge was particularly harsh in his assessment of Patricia's crimes. Mrs. Henderson, you have systematically betrayed the trust of every family member who loved you. You used their affection and respect as weapons to steal their financial security and peace of mind. This court finds your behavior particularly reprehensible because you targeted elderly and vulnerable family members who trusted you implicitly. Patricia was sentenced to 4 years in prison for fraud, identity theft, and elder abuse. She was also ordered to pay full restitution to all her victims, though the judge acknowledged that she would probably never be able to repay the full amount. The most satisfying part of the trial was watching Patricia's facade finally crumble. For years, she had presented herself as the family's moral center, lecturing everyone about responsibility and proper values. But faced with overwhelming evidence of her crimes, she could no longer maintain the pretense. Her final statement to the court was a rambling attempt to justify her behavior by claiming that everything she had done was motivated by love and concern for her family. Even at the end, she couldn't admit that her actions had been driven by addiction and greed rather than maternal instinct. But the real victory was the healing that began within our family once Patricia's manipulation was exposed. Family members who had been turned against each other by her lies began rebuilding their relationships based on truth rather than manufactured drama. My Uncle Robert and his wife invited me to dinner to apologize for believing Patricia's lies about my character. My cousin Beth asked for my forgiveness and offered to help me plan genuine family events at my house if I was ever interested in hosting them voluntarily. Most importantly, Marcus and Amanda began the hard work of repairing their relationship with me and addressing the damage that Patricia's manipulation had caused in their own lives. 6 months after Patricia's sentencing, I was finally able to enjoy my house the way I had originally intended. The 3-bedroom ranch had become a true sanctuary, a place where I could relax without worrying about unexpected family invasions or manipulative phone calls. Marcus and Amanda had used the wake-up call from the trial to make genuine changes in their lives. They entered family therapy to address the patterns of manipulation and entitlement that Patricia had instilled in them from childhood. Amanda got a part-time job to contribute to their household income, and Marcus was promoted again at the automotive plant. More importantly, they learned to respect boundaries. When they visited my house, it was by invitation only, and they never overstayed their welcome or made demands about how I should use my space. The twins, Jake and Emma, were a joy to have over for Sunday dinners because their parents had taught them to treat other people's homes with respect. Marcus pulled me aside during one of these visits to share something that meant a lot to me. "Dennis, I need you to know how sorry I am for everything that happened. I realize now that I was so afraid of Mom's anger that I was willing to sacrifice your happiness to avoid confronting her. That was cowardly, and it wasn't fair to you. He explained that therapy had helped him understand how Patricia's emotional abuse had affected both of her sons, creating patterns of fear and compliance that had lasted well into adulthood. I should have protected you from her schemes instead of participating in them. I hope I can spend the rest of my life making up for that mistake. The money from my father's secret account allowed me to help family members recover from Patricia's financial abuse. I paid for my grandmother's medical expenses that had been neglected while Patricia was stealing her Social Security payments. I helped Uncle Robert and his wife catch up on their mortgage payments after discovering how much money Patricia had taken from them. Most meaningfully, I was able to establish a small scholarship fund at the local community college for students from troubled family backgrounds. My father's letter had emphasized the importance of helping people escape cycles of manipulation and abuse, and the scholarship felt like a way to honor his memory while helping others. The legal aftermath continued for months. Patricia's conviction opened the door for civil lawsuits from her victims, and my father's meticulously documented evidence made those cases straightforward to win. The restitution orders would follow Patricia for the rest of her life, ensuring that she could never again accumulate the resources necessary to manipulate family members financially. The house itself became a symbol of healing rather than division. I decided to host genuine family gatherings for relatives who had supported me during the trial, creating the kind of warm, voluntary family connections that Patricia had always claimed to want, but had systematically destroyed through her manipulation. My cousin Beth's daughter did eventually have her wedding reception at my house, but this time it was a real celebration planned with my enthusiastic consent rather than a booking scam orchestrated by Patricia. The joy and gratitude from Beth's family felt completely different from the entitled demands I had faced during Patricia's campaign. My grandmother, now in her 80s, became a regular visitor to my house. She would sit in my living room and tell me stories about my father's childhood, helping me understand the man who had been quietly protecting me even after his death. "Your father knew that Patricia had problems," she told me one afternoon, "but he also knew that you were strong enough to handle whatever she threw at you when the time came. He was very proud of the man you became." The professional consequences of Patricia's harassment campaign completely resolved once the truth became public. My supervisor Janet apologized for the company's initial concern and offered me additional responsibilities as a way of demonstrating their continued confidence in my character. Several coworkers approached me privately to share their own stories of family financial manipulation, and I was able to refer them to Sarah Martinez, the private investigator who had helped me gather evidence against Patricia. It turned out that financial abuse within families was much more common than most people realized, and my willingness to fight back had inspired others to seek help. The most profound change was in my relationship with the concept of family itself. For years, I had accepted Patricia's definition of family loyalty, which required absolute compliance with her wishes regardless of how unreasonable or harmful they were. But I learned that real family relationships are built on mutual respect, honest communication, and voluntary affection rather than obligation and fear. I started dating again for the first time in years, no longer worried that a romantic partner would be subjected to Patricia's manipulation and boundary violations. When I met Sarah, a teacher at the local elementary school, I was able to introduce her to my family without fear that they would try to exploit her kindness or turn her against me. The house hosted its first Christmas celebration that December, with Marcus, Amanda, and the twins joining me for a dinner that was genuinely joyful rather than politically charged. We talked about normal family topics like the kids' school activities and Marcus's plans for vacation, without anyone making demands about money or living arrangements. Amanda pulled me aside after dinner to thank me for giving their family a chance to rebuild their relationship with me. "I know we don't deserve your forgiveness after everything we put you through," she said, "but I'm grateful that you're letting us prove we can be better family members than we were before." Looking back, I realized that keeping my house purchase secret wasn't about selfishness or distrust of my family's love. It was an instinctive act of self-preservation by someone who had learned through bitter experience that Patricia would weaponize any information she could gather about my life and resources. My father's letter had taught me that protecting yourself from toxic family members isn't a betrayal of family values. It's a necessary step toward creating the kind of family relationships that are actually worth preserving. Real love doesn't require you to surrender your autonomy or financial security to prove your loyalty. The house that Patricia had tried to steal became the foundation for rebuilding our family relationships on healthier terms. By refusing to be manipulated and standing up to her schemes, I had actually saved my family from continued abuse rather than destroying it. The life lesson that emerged from this experience was profound. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is to refuse to enable their worst impulses. Patricia's manipulation had been poisoning our family relationships for decades, turning relatives against each other and creating an atmosphere of fear and resentment. By exposing her schemes and holding her accountable for her crimes, I had given everyone in our family the chance to build relationships based on truth and mutual respect, rather than manipulation and fear. The family gatherings in my house were now celebrations of genuine affection, rather than performances designed to avoid Patricia's wrath. As I write this story, I'm sitting in my living room watching the sunset through the windows that Patricia once photographed for her illegal booking scheme. The house is quiet and peaceful, filled with furniture I chose and memories I created rather than demands I couldn't refuse and guilt I couldn't escape. Marcus and Amanda are building a good life in their own apartment, which they've learned to appreciate rather than seeing it as a stepping stone to something they felt entitled to take from me. The twins are growing up in a family environment free from Patricia's manipulation, learning healthy ways to express their needs and respect other people's boundaries. And somewhere in a state prison, Patricia is hopefully learning that love and family loyalty can't be built on lies, manipulation, and financial abuse. Real families support each other's independence and celebrate each other's success, rather than seeing individual achievement as a resource to be exploited by the group. I hope my story encourages others who are facing similar family manipulation to recognize that they deserve relationships based on mutual respect, rather than fear and obligation. Sometimes protecting yourself is the first step toward protecting everyone you love. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who couldn't respect your independence? How did you handle relatives who believed they were entitled to your resources just because you're related? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please consider liking this video to help others who might be facing similar family manipulation find the encouragement they need. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about overcoming toxic family dynamics and building healthier relationships. And please share this video with anyone who might benefit from hearing that it's okay to protect yourself from family members who won't respect your boundaries. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you the strength and wisdom to build the kind of family relationships that truly support your happiness and success, rather than undermining them. Remember, you deserve to be loved and respected for who you are, not exploited for what you can provide.